Welcome back to lecture 3, and today we will be starting the concept of environmental planning. So, before going to environmental planning, in this lecture we will cover the concepts of planning, the characteristics of planning process, different types of planning. There are different bases on which planning is categorized. So, we will look at those different bases and different types of plannings under each basis. And then strategic planning is one of the most important plannings which is used in environment as well as corporate sector. So, we will look at that and one case study for strategic planning. So, starting with planning, what exactly is planning? Obviously, the word means to plan something or to make a decision, and planning is always for something to be done in the future. We never plan for past or we cannot plan for the present. So, it has to be particularly aimed at future. So, it is a way of thinking oriented towards the future that anticipates change and design solutions to address those expected difficulties and thereby improve the quality of decision making. So, it is with the process of planning that we would know what are the expected changes and what are the possible scenarios that may arise in future for any activity or any task, and if there are some challenges, how we are going to address them. So, all these things are involved in the process of decision making. So, planning is basically making decision, making right choices, and it is inherent in almost every aspect of our life. So, it is also a systematic process of establishing ends. So, when I say ends, it can be goals, it can be policies, or it can be outcomes, because these are the things which would define the direction and the direction of future development, and obviously the means and procedures which would be applied to achieve the desired end. So, planning is a systematic process of decision making and establishing ends as well as means to achieve those ends. Okay. Overall, it can be a process, a discipline, activity, or a profession. You would have heard the words event planners, wedding planners, urban planners. Okay. So, planning is a profession in its own. Planning, because it is to do something, or even though it is making decisions, it is a process, or at times it is an activity also, because when you sit in a group and try deciding, making a plan for going on a tour or planning some wedding or planning some event, you do it as an activity, and also it is a profession. So, here are some examples, like we typically make plans for our journeys or travels. So, travel planning checklist, you make, what do we do? Depending on how much time we have, we make a checklist, we make a travel plan. For example, if we have 4 to 6 months for our trip, we check the budget, we pick up the destination, we select dates, we book flights, we buy insurance, we apply for passport, visa. So, there are many things which goes into just planning a simple thing like going on a vacation. Similarly, like if you have exams and if you want to make a study plan, it also involves a lot of planning. You set some goals, you make your schedule for the study, you set up a timetable that okay, today I am going to study this subject for this much time. This is a difficult subject, so you would be studying it earlier, spending more time on it. Something which is easier, you keep it at the end. So, all these aspects, they are the planning aspects. You identify your strengths and weaknesses, and accordingly you prioritize what thing to study when. Similarly, if you have to manage your monthly expenses, you know that okay, this is my salary, these are going to be the expenditures. Now, you prioritize, you set up like the food, water, phone, electricity, accordingly we manage our expenses. So, each of these activities, these are just 3 examples which I have given, but almost every activity that we do, it needs planning. But then are we talking about this planning here in this course when it comes to environmental planning and management? Because planning is so ubiquitous, it is general planning, it can be done by anyone, anytime, anywhere. When I say ubiquitous, it means something which is present everywhere, which can be done by anyone, anywhere, anytime. But that is not professional planning. Professional planning would be governed by some professional principles, some standards and some laws, and that is what is involved in corporate level planning or environmental planning also. So, in this course we will be looking at planning from that perspective. The book definition for planning is a sequence of deliberate purposeful actions designed to solve problems systematically, and as I say, it has to be for the future. So, by foreseeing and guiding change, whatever changes are going to happen in future, you foresee them, you predict them, and then you guide those changes, you govern the decisions which are going to deal with those changes through rational decisions, reconciling public and private aims, arbitrating between social, economic, political and physical sources. So, almost each aspect of the environment or the surroundings around that particular entity or for a product or a process for which this planning is to be done are taken into account. So, that is a book definition for planning, which you can memorize when it comes, like for example, like define planning. So, you could use this definition. It is a sequence of deliberate purposeful actions designed to solve problems systematically by foreseeing and guiding change through rational decisions, and it incorporates both like all the social, economic, political and physical forces. So, these are the some examples of professional planning. Let us say the website development process. How do we develop a website? Again, you do not directly go and start doing coding to make a website. First, you prepare a plan, and this is Gantt chart. It is one of the most common and most widely used tool to represent this plan schedule. So, this plan schedule you can see we typically write project proposals for research funding, and sometimes for PhD or for master's degree you prepare your work plan, like what you are going to do in next 2 years or next 5 years, that is represented in the form of a Gantt chart. So, here also, like let us say if a website development is a task which is given, there you do planning, framing, design, front end. So, all these things they are part of planning. Similarly, these are other examples of Gantt chart, and if you have to formulate any project before executing that project and putting it into the practice, there is a lot of planning which goes into that project, which we typically call as a project plan or a business plan if it is intended to start a startup company or a business. So, why this planning is important or why this professional planning is important? Because there are like something which we are going to start new. If we know like each and every aspect and element of that particular product or activity, it would be wise, it would be great to have all those information beforehand to reduce the risk of failure. So, for example, the first thing here it shows it provides direction. So, if we have a proper plan, we know which direction we have to proceed. For example, if you have to make a, if you have to start a shirt manufacturing factory. So, if we are targeting the cotton based shirt, we know like we would need cotton. So, we would go and talk to raw material supplier who would be suppliers of cotton. We would look for the raw material supplier who are nearby our factory site. Okay. So, that is, so once we know the direction, the execution would become easier. So, planning provides direction, it reduces the risk of uncertainty. Just like I gave the example of say cotton shirt factory, the risk of uncertainty has reduced, because the moment, even if I say the shirt manufacturing factory, and if we are going to like if there are multiple things from which a shirt can be made, it can be made from cotton, textile, plastic, polymers, then recycled polymers. Okay. There are many things which can be used as a raw material for making a shirt, but then once we figure out okay it is going to be from cotton, it reduces the risk of uncertainty like what raw material we are going to use. Same thing applies to the machineries, utilities, the location, site, okay. All these things if properly planned before starting up a factory, that will reduce the risk of uncertainty. Planning reduces overlapping and wasteful activity. There are many instances where things are like common between different segments, or you keep on repeating the same task under different segments, and so there is a overlap, and those overlapping or sometimes the wasteful activity which is not adding any value to the given task or activity, those would be reduced by proper planning. Then it promotes creativity and innovative ideas. Just like the example of shirt manufacturing factory, if there is a lot of brainstorming and discussion before starting the factory while making a business plan or like a project plan, there will be a lot of creative ideas and innovative ideas which would come. Obviously, there would be a team of people from multiple disciplines who would be involved in setting up that factory. One person taking a decision and multiple people taking decision as a team together will have a different impact. So, that will promote creativity and innovative ideas will come. And if we get these creative innovative ideas at the start of a project, just imagine that project is going to be more impactful, more successful. It facilitates decision making, obviously that is a inherent aspect of planning, and it establishes a standard for controlling. So, once we know the standards, the procedures, the quality that is expected to come out of a product that we are making, all those things would be known prior to us. So, that if all these things, how to set up a factory, how to manufacture a product, in fact how to test its quality and how to market it, ship it, what happens to its end of life, all those things if it is included in the planning stage, that will help us that will provide all these benefits and help reduce the risk of failures, uncertainty, overlapping, wasteful activity and all. So, there are different characteristics for planning process, because like I said, there are so many things involved in the planning itself, and while making decision there are many features or characteristics that we need to take into account. For example, planning should be comprehensive. All the important options and impacts, options means alternatives to do a particular task or activity. If there are multiple ways, let us say for example going from Delhi to Mumbai. Now, you can take a aeroplane, like a flight, you can go by land, you can't go by water because from Delhi is in the mainland of India and Mumbai is on the shore. So, air and land transport. On land there are multiple options, you can take a bus, car or a train. So, if there are different options, which option you are going to choose? So, that will depend on how comprehensive our planning is, what are the resources we have, what are our constraints. If time is the constraint, we would prefer to go by air. If money is the constraint, we would prefer to go by the cheapest transport, which is a public bus or public train. Okay. So, depending on that, we can choose a better or best option. So, planning should be comprehensive, all the possible significant or important options and the impacts of those options should be considered. It should be efficient. When I say planning, because planning is ubiquitous, it can be done by anyone, anytime, anywhere. Most of the time planning, the generic planning, it wastes a lot of time and money and you end up taking no decision. So, that should not happen in a professional planning. It should not waste your resources, particularly time or money. So, it should be efficient. It should be inclusive and participatory. Planning is particularly for someone. So, if it is for consumers of a product, I think those consumer from that segment, some people must be involved in the discussion. So, people who are affected by that decision, if they are getting involved in that process, it is going to have like say positive impact. Multidisciplinary, people from various disciplines would be required to take a bigger planning decision when it comes to corporate and environment. Informative, even planning is a process, it is a action, it will have some results, and those results when it is conveyed to people or the stakeholders who are going to get affected by it, it should be easily understood by them. So, that is the informative. Integrated, since there are different people involved in a company or different stages of a process or product life cycle, having an integrated plan is beneficial. When I say integrated, it means like there are different departments, different functions at different levels in a company. All of them should be aligned towards some common goal, some shared goal. So, the policies or the plans of different departments within a company should target towards a common goal or vision or mission of the company, then it will be more useful. It should be logical, cyclic and dynamic. So, because at the planning stage we do not really know what is going to work, what is not going to work, what is the best option. So, there should be an option to have that plan being responsive if there are some new demands, some new needs, if there is a feedback obtained from customer or some other stakeholders which demands some changes in the earlier plan, that should be there. So, it should be logical, cyclic, dynamic, it should be transparent. So, how that decision is taken, the process or how that plan is particularly made, that should be understood by everyone, and actionable. The plan should be realistic. We can't make a plan to walk to the moon, because obviously we can do a lot of planning for that task also, but it is not realistic. We need to have a plan which is actionable. So, these are some of the major characteristics of planning. When I have listed this 7, 8 or 10 characteristics, it need not mean that these are the only characteristics. There may be some more features which goes in very specific type of planning, but for generic planning process, for professional planning, these are the important characteristics. Now, when we say the coverage of planning, I can bifurcate it in the three aspects depending on the area, whether that plan is for a local level, a regional level, a national level or international level, okay, that is the area. The time frame of the plan, whether it is a short term, long term, medium term, it will depend on the number of the range of years, and the scope of the plan, whether it is accounting for physical, economic, socio-cultural, political, administrative. So, there are different scopes of plans. So, we can divide it on the three bases: scope, area and time. In the scope itself or the overall generic framework, planning can be of three types. It can be narrow, moderate, broad. Basically, the scope can be of three types: narrow, moderate and broad. So, narrow would be just a conceptual level or a perspective or a framework where we propose some perspective. Okay, this is one possibility to do a particular thing. For example, say climate change. If we have to tackle a climate change and some company has to make a, or some NGO has to make a plan, they can say, okay, if we plant trees, it is going to reduce climate change. Obviously, it is true, but it's just a perspective or a conceptual planning, very narrow in scope, and we can make a framework. We can select a land, say that okay, we can plant 1000 trees in this 1 square kilometer area, and that would be the narrow scope plan. Moderate, where you make the structure of that framework and do some developmental activity decisions. So, that for example, a city development plant or urban planning, that will come in the moderate scope. Broad would be the integrated, comprehensive, detailed plan which accounts for all the possible environmental impacts of all the activities involved in an organization and remedies to resolve them, all those things. So, that is a broad. And in time, it is a short term, medium term or long term. 1 to 3 years is typically short term plans for, let us say, expenditure or like revenue plan for any companies. Medium term would be 3 to 7, like a city development plan, which is typically 5 years plan, and long term plan would be which takes usually more than 10 years. For example, construction of a hydropower project or construction of a dam, highways, national highways, getting land approval and shifting of people, relocation, all those things take a lot of time. So, those are long term plans, medium term plans and short term plans. So, these are the three bases for covering the coverage of planning: scope, area and time. Now, types of planning. So, there are n number of types of planning, but here we have 5 bases on which we have classified the planning. So, what are those bases? Coverage of activities. So, based on the coverage of activities, planning can be corporate or functional. Based on the importance of contents, it can be strategic, tactical or operational. These are the most commonly used plans in corporate world, and among 6 is a strategic planning, which is most widely used in the corporate as well as in the environmental sector. Then time period involved, whether it is a long term, short term, and the approach, whether it is proactive or reactive. Proactive means something which we plan well in advance, we foresee the future and in advance we do the planning to remedy, to provide a remedy to the problem which may be arising in future. And reactive planning would be sometimes there would be a problem which comes to us and then we plan on how to solve that problem. So, that is the reactive approach, and based on the degree of formalization, it can be either formal or informal planning. For informal planning is a generic planning which is mostly ubiquitous, and formal planning would come in the more of a professional planning. So, these are different bases on which we can classify planning into different types. Moving forward, let us focus on what is strategic planning, because I said like the content of the plan is going to be the most important thing for any plan, and based on the content and its importance, the first type of planning is strategic planning. So, it is again, strategy means itself often a plan. If you do the Google search of the word strategy, the meaning would be a plan or decision or making a decision or making a plan. So, strategic planning is systematically developing an organization's direction. So, once we set up a vision or mission, it can tell us in which direction a particular organization has to progress. So, it specifies the goals and its steps to realize that future vision and metrics for measuring success. So, the goals, that is the final destination where we have to reach, and ways to reach that goals, that will also come under strategic planning. So, these processes like strategizing, goal setting, identifying the most important approach or actions or tactics to reach that goal, these are typically included in the strategic business planning, and they aim or they are focused towards fulfilling the company's goals and objectives. And when we try to do this strategic planning before starting a company or before having a company idea, the result of this strategic planning is actually going to be a viable business plan. So, let us say like when we say strategic planning, we have vision, growth, we do a lot of research, we build teams, we do marketing, innovation. So, all these aspects of corporate world involves developing strategies, and it is the company's strategic planning which will serve as a guide when there are new threats or some unexpected changes happening in the market, and this guide in the form of strategic plan will help in solving those problems and improving the overall performance, as well as taking advantage of new opportunities which are available in the market. And one more thing, it is not a one time process, but it is an ongoing process. So, it is evolving with time and it is supposed to evolve. That is the basis for continuous improvement for any company. So, if you look at the framework of strategic planning, it is a very simple, it is a 5-step framework. You start from this point where you set the direction. So, when you set the direction, you know like where are we today and where we want to go in a specific time. Suppose like if you talk about like completing a marathon, I will take example of a marathon. So, completing a marathon is our goal or is our direction. The next step is you set goals. So, goals are like small objectives which would contribute towards ultimate direction. So, if marathon is of say 42 kilometer, we can't start practicing right away 42 kilometer, we would first prepare for say 10 kilometer, then we go and push ourselves to 20, 30 and then you go up to 40. So, these intermediate targets or goals would be set, that is the second step. Like where, in which direction we have to go, how we are going to approach, that is the strategy. So, how we are going to like be capable of running 10, 20, 30 and 40 kilometer in a specific time frame, let us say 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and we have say 4 to 6 months for preparing for marathon. So, accordingly based on the time frame we would set our goals and try to achieve those goals. So, strategy would be like again like how much warm up, how much exercise we need to do, what would be our diet and all. So, those are the strategies on how are we going to achieve those goals. Then plan the action, again those exercises and all, where do we do it, how we are doing it, how much time we are going to do it, are we going to hire any trainer, is there going to be some partner with us. So, all those things are going to be implemented in the plan action. So, when I say plan action means we do not need to do any action, we are just planning at this stage, okay, this is how we will be doing practice for a marathon. And final is the evaluate. When I say evaluate, even for evaluation we would make a plan, how we are going to evaluate at the end whether our training is going proper or not. We check our like we do medical checkup, physical checkup, check our heartbeat, oxygen, pulse rate, everything would be checked, and we check the timing, the performance, whether we are able to do it, whether we are on track for respective goals or not. So, all those things would be under the evaluation. So, each of these 5 stages needs lot of brainstorming, lot of decision making, all those characteristics that we studied in the process of professional planning, and these 5 steps together incorporated by all those coverage and characteristics form the framework of strategic planning. This is one example of strategic communications planning framework from Canada's government website, and here like you can see, like if there is an organization, they have their internal environment where they have their communities like employees, that is the internal environment, and then there are external stakeholders who are affected by the activities of that organization. So, basically current situation, where are we now? Now, where we want to be. If you remember the framework, set the direction. To set the direction, we need to know where are we now and where we aim to go in future. So, that will give us objectives. How we are going to get there, like by setting goals and setting strategy, that involves the activities, planning all those activities. And how will we know if we are getting there? For that we need the stage of evaluation. For that we need to measure impacts and effects and know whether we are on track or not. So, that is one example of strategic planning and how we do it. In companies, when this strategic planning is placed, there are different levels, like like top level management, middle level management, and then there is a executive level, the lowest level management, where we have teams and managers. So, they typically do the operations, the middle level managers, they do the tactics, and the top management or executive level management is mostly involved in the strategic planning. So, strategic planning is typically placed at the top of the management hierarchy. So, they decide what, why and when, and it is typically long term plans, okay. And it is mostly comprehensive because they have to make those strategies aligning with the vision and mission of the organization. Now, what, why and when these strategies are decided, how do we like propose to implement it through our team? That is done by the middle level management, different departments focusing on their specific task and where and how they would imply or apply these strategies and policies, that is their job. And the daily management of execution would be done by the lower level management, which comprises of teams and managers, and that is also involves a lot of comprehensive planning. This is one example of Indore's waste to manage energy plant. SWM stands for solid waste management. Indore is being awarded as the cleanest city in consecutive years since last I think since last decade. And if you look at this, what happens here, most of the waste from all the localities, it is being brought to the common facility where the plant treats it and converts it into energy through the in the form of biogas. So, for this plant, because it is a public private partnership based plan. So, if we have to look at what strategic planning was involved. So, it's strategic planning, it is a long term goal. So, achieving 100% waste segregation, that was a strategic plan. So, objective or intention was so that no waste goes to landfill, there is zero landfill, and most of the resources from the waste are actually recovered. So, this needs long term planning, and it is the top management which took this task and activity of deciding this plan. Tactical would be the city management plan, where we have trucks moving around. So, we have infrastructure around the city which will help in managing like collecting that waste, bringing it to community facilities and then bringing it to the common processing facility. So, the biogas plant, the composting units, how it is going to be managed or routed. So, those are the tactical plan which will be undertaken by the city municipal corporation or council. Then operational would be the workers who are working on ground, the vehicles, the drivers who goes from door to door, building to building and collect the waste, segregate it, and the employees at the waste treatment unit who does all the measurement and processing things. So, that is how like every organization or any plant need not be a company all the time, it can be a waste water treatment facility or waste processing facility or even a consultancy. There would be different levels of management doing different types of planning, basically strategic, tactical and operational. So, to summarize, in today's lecture what we covered was the planning concept and definition, the characteristics. There are so many characteristics, but we focused on 8 to 10 major characteristics, and the coverage on the basis of scope, area and time, on the 3 bases. Then on the basis, on the 5 different bases, we studied different types of planning, giving more emphasis on strategic planning, its placement in the company's hierarchy structure, how it is entangled or how it goes along with tactical and operational planning, along with the case study of Indore waste management facility. Thank you so much.